I've made a number of allusions to how there's been a lot going on in my life lately. In fact, like the last 6 months have been really rough, and the last couple of months have been, the apex of it. I ended up in the hospital last week, 2 weeks ago. I haven't wanted to talk about it because there's been a lot to process. I'm still not 100% sure that I can talk about everything, but I thought that today would be just an opportunity to catch you up on everything that's going on in life and just give you some unfiltered thoughts about where I'm at and where I think I'm headed from here, and the challenges that are going to be a big part of that. So you probably noticed the length of this video. I'm not going to stand here in the rain talking the whole time. I'm going to head home. We'll sit down, have a nice garage monologue-esque chat if you're in for that. This is just to keep you updated as to what's going on in my life and explain why you might not see me around as much for a minute and how you might as well. It's confusing. Well, let's talk about it. So I've been going through a lot the last 6 months. And in the past, this is the kind of stuff that I would have shared, I think, a little bit more in bits and pieces over the course of daily vlogging, whatever else. But a lot of it's been stuff that I've been trying to figure out more or less on my own. And I don't know if that's the right thing to do either. I do think it's important to share with you. But I'm also at an inflection point with the career of what I'm doing. So I want to get through kind of all of that. I'd also like to keep it succinct. I don't want to take up a lot of your time. I'm not looking for any pity. My life in so many ways is so great, and I have so much to be grateful for. And that's actually where I want to start. I think it's really important to keep in mind. And also, it'll wrap back up around other things that I'm grateful for as a result of everything that I've been going through. I've gotten enough messages on the side to know that I've alluded to this enough. But also, one of the great blessings of my time on YouTube has been the ability to share. And if you're not familiar with garage monologues, I referenced that earlier, but a garage monologue is what I used to do in 2016 when I started daily vlogging. And I would literally just put my camera on top of one of my parents' cars. I was in my parents' house for a few months, just trying to figure out what I was doing with my life. It was on one of those days where I really hadn't filmed very much, or I didn't really know what to share through the day. So I would just go into the garage and I would talk to the camera and just kind of share where I was at. And usually it was something that I was struggling with. And often I would hear myself speak, sit down to edit it, and just be like, this isn't how I want to approach life. This isn't how I want to engage with what I'm going through right now. And I would go back out to the garage and I would film it again. And it was a bit of a process of learning how to really listen to myself, but also change the way that I was seeing the world, to change the narrative that I was living within. That's kind of the moment that we're having right now as well. And I've had quite a bit of this already. The blessing of not vlogging daily is I'm not doing everything totally in public anymore. But also this journey that I've been on, from coming to Paris back in 2017 at the very beginning to getting my citizenship this year, is a really big chapter in my life. And I think it's one of the chapters that a lot of people have been along for the ride for. Even got a comment on Instagram, some guy saying, I've been watching since you moved here. Now you finally got it, and I'm done. I don't think he meant it that way, but it came across very much like he was like, all right, I've been watching this whole time, and now I'm out. So that's the first thing I'm grateful for, is you, and for having you here, and for watching, and for the people that have been along for a long time. A long time. So I'm really, really grateful for everything that you guys have given me. I'm so grateful for the relationships in my life right now. My friends have meant so much to me. The last few years in particular, I've really developed some very good friendships, and I'm really, really lucky and really grateful for them. And they've been there for me in the midst of all this in all the ways they can. And I love them very much. And I'm really, really grateful for them. I'm grateful that I got to spend some time with my family recently. I could not afford to go back. This is what we're going to get into a little bit. The financial times have been pretty tough, and I couldn't really afford to go back to see my family, but my dad was kind enough to offer to bring me back. And my sister has since offered to do the same thing, which is very lovely of them. But getting to go see my nephews and spend time with my sister in particular, because it's so hard for her to come this way, it was really, really, really good. And thankfully my dad will be coming back over this way soon as well. I have started seeing somebody recently, which has been really, really life-giving as well. Not something I'm going to talk about much yet because it's very new, but it's been really, really nice and nourishing, which has been a gift. And there's been some personal and professional growth through all of this. So there's a lot to be thankful for. And I think that the mid to long term is looking really good for a lot of reasons. It's just been a very brutal short-term season. So I'm going to catch you up on a little bit of that. I have made comments about this in the past. And then I'll just let you know kind of where I think I'm going from here. But this whole video is going to basically end with me kind of putting my hands up in the air just to say, I don't really know what's coming and what to do. That's where I'm at right now. And I think you'll understand why by the time I get to the end of all of this. On the hard side, the number one hardest thing over the last 6 months has been payroll stress. So I have a small team of people that are amazing. I'm actually really, really grateful for them. We just lost one. Unfortunately, she was my first contracted employee. She was on a CDD, which is a temporary contract. They're permanent and temporary contracts in France. So she was on a temporary one that we renewed once, and then we're not allowed to renew again, which is okay because she's gone back to school. She's going to get her master's. We miss her dearly. If she happens to see this, we would love to have her back anytime. But she was a huge, huge blessing, especially as we spun off Paris in My Pocket into its own YouTube, Instagram channels. She was instrumental in that and is just genuinely amazing. Ariana, phenomenal. Then I have Emily, my assistant, who's been with me for years now, a few years, I think, and is also phenomenal. Saves my life on the daily, keeps me sane, deals with most communication, but so many things. Emily is in the weeds of so many things. If I didn't have her, I think my head would explode, which is also part of where the stress comes from because of the fear of ever losing her. And then Molly is the newest addition to the team. If you saw the Paris in My Pocket video on doing Paris in 24 hours, or your first day in Paris, you catch glimpses of her at lunch with me and out and about. She's taking over the social side of things from Ariana and moving into that space. We have Jeff back in the States doing work on the app. So the Paris in My Pocket, like online guide, all of that stuff, he's doing the programming on the back end of that. And then some freelancers along the way, like Joshua and Paolo, who are doing editing for me and are phenomenal. And that's about it for right now. We've had other people come through along the way, but that's basically the team currently as it stands. And they're great. Like everybody on my team, I'm so happy with. I'm really, really thrilled with them. And that's why it makes it so hard that this year's been rough for a handful of reasons. One, you might have noticed in talking with different people around Paris, this has been in some of my videos here and there. You may have heard this through the grapevine. It was just a really hard year across the board for a lot of people in Paris. The Olympics were promised to bring in a ton of money. Of course, we knew that was likely not to happen. Like if you know the history of big events like the Olympics, you know that it can actually have quite the negative impacts depending on how things go. We knew that going into it, but definitely I thought for one that I would be less affected by it because what I do is online, is informational, but because so many people were scared away from the Olympics by the early like price gouging, the Parisians were scared out of town because they were told it was going to be chaos. There were huge posters in the metro saying like, stay home, don't commute to work, it's going to be insane. Like there was just a lot of, I don't know if it was fear-mongering or misinformation or what it was, but a lot of people were driven away from the city, while at the same time businesses were encouraged to staff up, to double down, like to make the most of the Olympics. And so a lot of people, myself included, overextended themselves on how much they thought they were going to get out of that investment. Thankfully, I didn't overextend myself too much, but the other thing that I decided to do at the same time was to spin off Paris in My Pocket into its own brand. So this summer we put a lot of effort into the Instagram and the YouTube and everything else to try and separate them from myself, to put daylight between them. And when people ask why, I think that there are a lot of reasons why, but the main reason is because imagine that you don't know who I am, which you might not know who I am. You might have stumbled on this video for the first time. Welcome to the party. But imagine that you just find one of my Paris videos, like how to use the metro or something about coffee, who knows what. You're like, ooh, I want more of that. And then you go to my channel and you find a whole bunch of videos like this one. And you're just like, who's this guy? Just sharing his life in Paris. This isn't what I wanted. And you vanish. Which also brings us to a big question about like, what am I doing on this channel anymore? But we'll get to that. The drop in revenue was a big one for those two reasons, among some others. But also in that refocusing, we lost a lot of momentum. We stopped working with sponsors for a while to, focus on getting this going. We weren't putting out as many videos, and we were really focused on growing the social side of things, which is going very well. But socials don't drive revenue the same way that like YouTube does. So there's just it was like the perfect mix of things that all kind of came together at once that like wasn't gonna be great. Now, to my credit, I saw this coming. Like I wasn't totally blindsided by this, and I had a plan. If you remember, in 2021, I got blindsided by URSAF, which is the office that deals with social charges. URSAF came at me for like 32,000 euros out of the blue, which is why I ended up firing my first French accountant because she had not forewarned me that I needed to be saving money, putting money aside for URSAF during COVID. They paused payments. They were not forgiving those payments. They just paused them for some reason. They just weren't taking that money. And then they came for the full amount, just out of the gate, just guns blazing. It was a very stressful time. And I managed to get a personal loan, and a small business loan to cover me during that period. Everything kind of got sorted. It's a long story. It's a very stressful time. We got to figure it out. And so I took this same kind of approach where I was like, oh, well, if I think I've been around long enough business-wise, I should be able to get a loan. I went and talked to my bank. They were like, yeah, it shouldn't be a problem. We should be able to get you a loan. Just need your numbers. Fast forward a little bit. I couldn't really get my numbers from my accountant. And when I did finally get my numbers from my accountant, it turned out that they were doing the numbers wrong. And not just a little wrong, like dramatically wrong. And so when I showed that to the bank, thankfully, and not that, I mean, I don't know how I feel about this, but they caught it. They were like, what? Okay, first off this, second off this. The biggest one was that I do exchange, like I make money in dollars and exchange it to euros, which is why I like Wise so much. And I do talk about them and dream of them being a sponsor again someday. But I make a lot of, little microtransactions. So at the end of the year, there's like, I gain or usually lose something in the range of like 200 euros. Total, where they say, okay, you lost a little bit of money on the currency exchange side of things. That's not a big deal. It's actually kind of phenomenal given like how much I do end up paying for things in dollars into euros. My neighbor's dog just going off there. And on my last accounting, I'd lost about 200 euros. This year, they claimed that I lost 10,000 euros, but that I also earned 22,000 euros. So I somehow netted a 12,000 euro profit this year, supposedly, on currency exchange. Which, if that's the case, you can make an argument that that should be my real business. Like, that's what I should really be doing. The bank wouldn't touch me as a result of my funky numbers, and it gets deeper than that, but that's an example. And when I took this to my former accountant, they just were like, no, that's just the way it is. Like, they did not want to deal with it. They refused to take responsibility. There's a lot of back and forth. I ended up getting a new accountant, firing them, and now the new accountant is digging through to try and figure out if they can sort things out. They're very helpful in finding where some of the discrepancies were, and they come recommended from a friend. They are hopefully trustworthy. But that was months. Like, I was hoping to get this loan in like June, and I didn't finally get the official no until September. So I saw the cliff coming, and I was trying to do whatever I could to avert catastrophe, and then we went flying off the cliff in O'Doyle style, which is a reference that I don't know who's going to get that. So the timing of all of this has been pretty rough. And we kind of just went on like, okay, this is about as bad as it's going to get kind of mode. So payroll stress is one of the biggest ones for me. Everybody's been amazing and has rallied around. We're all doing what we can. I took a very deep personal, I've been paying myself the bare minimum that I can for about 6 months. It's starting to affect everybody else. I wish it wouldn't. And I think that we've figured out how to get out of this. I do see the road forward. And like I said, the mid to long term looks really good. So again, I'm not looking for any pity here, but that also helps you to understand how maybe I ended up in the hospital later. Before we get to that, I do have some family stuff going on that's also been going on for a while. You may know that I cut my mom completely out of my life a while back. There are some dramatic things happening around that, looming deaths in the family, some big changes, and it has raised a lot of really big and stressful questions. There was one night where I went to bed thinking my mom might actually have died, and I've had a lot of time to really reflect on what all that means, what my obligations to family that I'm estranged from are. And again, I've come out the other side better for it, but it's quite the potent cocktail. Cooper was sick with a mystery illness for a couple of months. He had an allergy that has changed our lifestyle a little bit and has made a little bit of extra stress. Worrying about your dog, like, I don't really want to have to worry about my dog. I love him and I just want him to be happy and healthy and fine. There have been a lot of career questions that have come out of the last year about YouTube and the future, all of that. And basically all of this ended up landing me in the hospital because I started experiencing some pains about the time that I went back to the States. So, I don't know, just around a month ago, and just felt like my ribs were pinching something between them and my hips, just about in the midsection. And I thought maybe my hips were starting to lock up or something. I'm getting old. I got glasses this year as well. I finally admitted I needed them for reading. I thought I'd just wear them today to be purely vulnerable with you because I actually like these glasses a lot. It's just a new identity change in the mix of all of this, because why not? Let's just throw some more in there. And so finally, I'm a little bit dissociative when it comes to pain. To give you, I shared this on Instagram recently, but to give you an idea that I think will loop you into where my childhood was as well. When I was a kid, as far back as I can remember, I suffered just absolutely splitting migraines. Like 3 or 4 times a week, that would just knock me flat for hours. I'd have to go to a dark, cold room somewhere. I'd end up getting pulled out of class or, just hiding somewhere at home to hope that it went away. We ended up seeing a neurologist finally when I was in high school to try and figure it out. They never could. Not a big fan of my neurologist for other reasons. But fast forward to leaving for college, and just kind of magically, those migraines just kind of went away. And then I read, in the literature, Reading the Body Keeps the Score. Difficult book to read, but they talk about that being a classic sign of child abuse. Really fun. So my relationship with pain as a result of that is a little bit funny because I don't really notice it that much. And I'm very good at ignoring it until I can't anymore. It's partially the American in me, which is just, completely does not want to ever end up in the hospital because I don't want to go bankrupt. It's part of the machismo of being raised around a bunch of cowboys and farmers and engineers and all that stuff. Like, I'm fine, I'm bleeding, but who cares? And then part of it's just I don't really feel it in a way that's not that healthy. So it comes to a head 10 days ago, I think. Yeah, maybe 2 weeks ago now, where I woke up at like 4 a.m. with this abdominal pain to the point that I really couldn't breathe very well anymore. Like about a half a breath, and it was just like I couldn't, breathe anymore. Thankfully, my sister was available on text, and she made a good case that maybe I should not just suffer through this. Maybe I should actually call a doctor, especially if, who knows, my spleen's about to explode. And the thought of a spleen exploding was enough to get me to, call SAMU, the medical services, emergency medical services. Talk to a doctor, they walk through my symptoms, and they're like, well, we think you might be having a kidney stone or maybe an infection. You should go to the hospital. But I wasn't about to die, so I did go back to sleep because the pain had reduced enough that I was like, I'm tired. So I just went back to sleep. And then I went to the hospital the next day. I had a great experience overall. The hospital was great. I mean, never want to go to the hospital, but it was a good experience. And it was France, so they never asked for money, which was nice. They did some tests. They think it was a kidney stone. If it was, it has already passed. But the pain is stuck around. And I went and saw a urologist. There's a whole bunch of stories involved in this, but at the end of the day, I've come to realize I think it's just the stress has finally scrambled my insides. I'm gonna go see a new doctor. I've had some bad doctor experiences through this as well. It's not all perfect. I've been referred to another doctor that hopefully will be great. But by taking a step back, doing some yoga, not working as much as I can, sleeping without an alarm. I've been sleeping like 10 hours a day. I've definitely seen a reduction in the pain, and things have started to feel a lot better. So I do really think that it's just the stress. And the reason I'm filming this vlog on a Tuesday and I'm just gonna get it out like this is also so I can take a little staycation from Wednesday to Sunday and really just check out, not work, think, reflect. I have a lot of reflecting to do, but maybe also just try not to think and make some muffins. I don't know. Have a nice time. And that kind of brings me to some more good and also some questions that I have for myself and also for you. The good is that I've really learned and grown a lot through all of this. I think that as a business owner, and what's funny is I don't think most people that look at me, especially through, YouTube, Instagram, whatever, I don't know that they see a business owner. But I have a lot of responsibilities and I have a lot riding on me, and a lot of it's riding on my performance. If I can't perform, everything grinds to a halt. And that also means that other people are at risk of not getting paid. And that is a very real responsibility that I have felt before, but it's never been as stressful as it has been in the last 6 months. I think I've just had to go through this. I think it's something that I've had to learn a lot of lessons. I've had to grow up in some ways. I've had to take responsibility for some decisions that I've made. It would be very easy to blame the Olympics and my accountant for all my woes, but in reality, there are decisions that I made that put me in this position as well. And it's something that I have to take responsibility for. It's something that I've apologized profusely to my team for. And it's something that I'm trying to protect them from, and I'm trying to very much learn from so I never make these kinds of mistakes again. It also raises a lot of big questions about the future, about where we're going. I think that in that questioning, we realize there's a really good future for Paris in My Pocket, and we're figuring it out. We've been stuck trying to figure some stuff out, but I feel like we're finally figuring out what we're going to be doing and where it's going to go, which is really exciting. The other side is the question of who am I and what is the content I'm making? I've shared that in the future, I want to get back to my fiction. I really want to get back to the stories that I've already written 12 books in this world that I want to go back to. I am working on it behind the scenes a couple of hours a week when I have a little bit of time. I'm trying to make sure that it's a part of my routine again. Where's the middle ground? How do we get there? Where do we go from there? What do you get from me? And this is kind of the question that I have for you, is partially what would you like to see from me moving forward on this channel and Jay Swanson stuff? It's also partially looking back. I think there's an indicator in looking at if you've been following for a short time or following for a long time, where have you gotten value from me before? I'm getting kind of emotional asking that question too, because there's a part of me that has a really hard time believing that anything I do is actually valuable. We can loop that back to the mom conversation we can have someday. And I'm very open to sharing my experience with my family, with my mom, with setting boundaries, with taking the battle to where it belongs. We talk about therapy in the future, all that stuff. But I think what I really am curious about is why you're here and why you would stick around and what it is that would keep you around. But also something has to change. Like I have things I want to try, experiments, like videos, movies, whatever, that I think would be a lot of fun to make. So engaging with that and asking the question of myself, what do I want to make? What's going to be fun? What's going to be exciting? But taking into account that it's for an audience. At this point, it is a business. Like the future will be art. Like I look forward to making the art, the fiction, whatever. And I'll try to weave some art in there. And for me, art is just making it, to express myself, to be joyful, to have fun. That can just be art. It can overlap with content and art. There's a gray zone there. But I am a content creator. And ultimately, content has to be for an audience and it has to work. It has to do something to pay the bills. And that puts us in this kind of just spot where I'm like, okay, I'm open to seeing where that goes. Paris in My Pocket, I think, has a bright future there. What does, what am I doing? What's going on here? I think that's basically it. I did mean for this to be a touch shorter, but hey, garage monologue. This is basically the length of a mono or a solo podcast episode. I'm looking forward to seeing what you say in the comments below. I'm definitely taking the rest of this week off, so I will schedule this. Whenever you see this pop up, it's because I scheduled it. I do have some sponsorships that I need to do, so like I'll definitely be showing up. I've been keeping a weekly cadence for a while now, but I might also take a break from that. I'm just going to try and listen to my gut and follow what needs to happen and not be too scared of what that looks like. So you'll probably see more of me like on Instagram Reels and stuff, because we have that kind of more slotted than this, but we'll figure it out. Thanks for listening. I hope that answers some questions if you've been wondering in the background about like what's going on and why I've been a little bit loopy and stressed. I don't think I forgot any major details, but yeah. Now I got to go to another doctor's appointment right now. That'll be fun. And it's raining. Hooray. Hope you're doing well. Hope that if you're coming to Paris sometime soon, you have a great time. And if you don't, that whatever I can do to help bring Paris to you a little bit also works out. So I'll talk to you soon.